Hello, and welcome to Higher Voltage, a podcast about higher education that explores what's working, what's not, and what needs to change in higher ed marketing and administration. I'm your host, Kevin Tyler.
Well, welcome back to Higher Voltage. I'm so pleased to have you with us. Joining me today is Elliot Felix. Elliot is a student success author, speaker, and consultant to more than 100 colleges and universities. He uses his background in design to create better connected colleges and universities by helping institutions rethink what they offer, how they are organized, and how they operate. Through his consulting work at Bright Spot Strategy and Burrow Happold with institutions including Carnegie Mellon, MIT, NYU, NC State, and the University of Virginia, Elliot has improved the experience for more than 1 million students. That's wild. His first book, How to Get the Most Out of College, was published in January 2022 and has received a blue star from Kirkus Reviews, calling it a knowledgeable, enthusiastic guide packed with strategies and encouragement. His latest book, The Connected College, Leadership Strategies for Student Success, which we are going to talk about today, was published in July 2025 as the #1 new release in education administration and was named one of the top 10 books in higher education in 2025 by Forbes. Elliot lives in Minneapolis with his son Theo, daughter Nora, and wife Liz. Elliot, thank you so much for joining me on Higher Voltage today.
It's great to be here. And I'm excited for a high voltage conversation.
Oh, hey there. Words, I love it. That's the first time someone said that. And so you get 10 bonus points. Before we get into kind of the nooks and crannies of the book, I'm curious if you can kind of set the stage for what you mean by a connected college. Can you define that phrase or term? And what are the inputs that create a connected college?
Yeah, I think the best way to start the conversation is the same way I start the book, which is a story of a university I was helping create a student success hub. And at the kickoff meeting, we've got everyone around the table. You know, we've got the IT, we've got library, we've got career, we've got the math lab, tutoring, the writing center, the writing lab. And I asked the obvious question, what's the difference between a writing lab and a writing center? And it turned out there wasn't one, really. It was just they were in two different buildings, reported to two different sets of folks. And this hub was a chance for them to work better together. And to me, that's what being a connected college or university is all about. It's about breaking down those silos, creating a strategy that focuses, changing the structure so that students succeed. And so that instead of having kind of like distributed functions and sprawling tech stacks, everybody's working together to enable student success. And I see tons of, amazing, well-meaning students, faculty, staff trying to make this happen, but things get in their way. And so much of colleges and universities is defined by these separations, right? Like teaching from research and academia from industry and online from on campus and STEM versus the humanities and liberal versus conservative. And I'm hoping for a more connected future where all those folks are working together to make it happen for students.
I think it's an interesting notion, making it more connected. I think that for all the good intention that higher education often has for its students and their educational journeys, these fractures can easily happen, right? We have, like you said, writing center, writing lab. There's there can sometimes be a fracture between admissions and retention. There can be a fracture between this and that. And they happen almost innocently, right? Like where someone's like, we need something else to serve X, Y, Z. And then this thing stands up and then it becomes a friction in the student experience because people don't really know where to go. Yep. So, combining it all into an experience feels that we're all responsible for, feels like a bit more of a progressive and responsible way to move forward with creating a student experience that serves all. Does that make sense?
It does. And in the book, I try and contrast those silos and separations with 5 connections I'm hoping that people can create and sustain. One is a sense of connection to a community, a feeling of belonging. The other is connecting students to the support they need to succeed, whether it is the writing center / lab. By the way, they ended up getting combined, and it's just a writing center. And Everybody's happy, especially the students. The third thing is really connecting courses and careers, then collaborating internally and partnering externally. And so I think if we can do those 5 things, then we have much better connected colleges and universities where everyone's not just like aligned on the mission, which generally people are, but aligned on how to live it and how to make it happen. And that's what I'm hopeful for and working toward with lots of folks.
Yeah, it's exciting to think about that, the delivery system for a connected college and helping people kind of understand their role in that delivery. I'm curious if you have any thoughts around how to break through some of that calcified thinking around how higher education typically operates for itself to get closer to a more connected college, if that makes sense.
Well, this may be my disciplinary bias, but I'm a strategist at heart and in soul, I guess, as well. And so for me, I think a lot of this starts with strategy. I think every institution has a strategic plan. They have to for accreditation, but few institutions have a strategy. And I love Roger Martin's definition, distillation of strategy into where to play and how to win. And I think a lot of times what you get is you get a kind of a feel-good strategic plan where everyone's gotten in a room and it's sort of like the challenge was pretty similar to picking their favorite flavor of ice cream. And, surprise, it's either chocolate or vanilla. But in not chocolate and vanilla, it's, organizational excellence and, transformative learning or whatever it might be. And it doesn't help people say no. It doesn't help people focus. And you have to go one level deeper. What kind of transformative learning? Like, is this hands-on learning? Is it experiential learning? Is it active learning? How is it active? How is it experiential? With whom? On behalf of whom? For what? To what end? So I think a lot of it starts with strategy. And if institutions can really focus, that's a great first step, because then you can get to differentiation, which, is pretty important when it comes to marketing.
Yeah, 100%. First of all, the point about strategic plans, I do not want to veer off into that land too much, but I really appreciate you bringing that up because it can often, be made to stand in for marketing. And that is not what strategic plans are made to do, right? Like, throw it on the website and make it a PDF. And then there we go. We have a strategic plan. And there's often very little really intentional follow up on those documents that make it feel real in real life for students, right? It's just like a checkbox, which I appreciate you mentioning, how strategic plans work in the higher education ecosystem. I am curious, though, if you could speak to how this notion of being or becoming a connective college can apply itself to the evolution of higher ed, right? We see these new kinds of technologies. AI, of course, is at the top of everyone's mind. Job readiness is one of the top, concerns for not just employers, but for prospective students and their parents. The value of higher education. Where does the connected college fall into all of this, do you think?
Well, when I wrote the book, I set out to create an encouraging evidence-based playbook for breaking down silos so that students could succeed. And the best tool I know to do that silo busting and that collaboration and those partnerships and rethinking the org and the ops and the offer is design thinking. So throughout the book, I'm really trying to leverage design thinking so that people have this mindset, this toolkit for creating better connected colleges and universities. And, in the book, I talk about there's 4 key ideas around it. There's, understanding people, which I think is so critical because who our students are is changing, demographics shifting for sure. Then the next is making connections, right? So if you think about a traditional, more siloed institution, of course, you can reorganize and get everything perfect, but lots of times that's not an option. So you have to do things like co-locate, like at least we can get these functions together. Or you can create like a community of practice, right? You can get all the marketers together in various schools in Central, and they can be singing the same song and using the same templates and using the same brand. So that connections is the second part. The third is co-creating, right? So when you get those folks together, you're like defining the problem or identifying the opportunities together. So you have that shared sense and you can collaborate, and then you're coming up with ideas together. So they're more likely to be robust, right? Because you've looked at them from different perspectives, bringing data, lived experience. And then fourth, you're prototyping, you're trying things out, you're doing the A/B testing, you're doing the prototype of a new space before you build the whole thing out. You're running a workshop, running a program before you build out a new degree. You're testing it in continuing ed. And I see design thinking and those kind of four principles, as it were, great instruments for creating better connected colleges and universities.
I appreciate that explanation because that makes a lot of good sense. It feels like it also helps individual institutions as well as the industry at large keep up with the pace of expectations of their communities that they serve, right? If we are doing this constant test and learn, this constant evolution, this constant brainstorming about how we can be better deliverers of a really successful student experience, that then helps us become or maintain a fluency in the expectations that our audiences are really craving. And I think it's a really nice exercise in, the modernization of the student experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're not just designing for today, we're designing for tomorrow. And things are changing, whether it's demographics, whether it's technology, whether it's culture, whether it's the future of work, and the skills and relationships students need to succeed. So I think getting in a rhythm of looking ahead, seeing around corners, testing things, I think is really critical. And it's like how you build the muscle memory around that is critical. Like in addition to big ideas and case studies and data in the book, I also try and like drop in these little snippets of like tactics. And, one of them for leaders is just, you have to build that prioritization muscle memory. And one way of doing it is when you make a list of anything, put it in priority order and tell people, here are the 5 things we're working on in declining order of priority. And just that exercise of like, it's 4:00 on a Friday. I guess I'm not going to get to number 5. And thank goodness this list was in order because I did 1 through 4. Yeah. I think it's small things like that also is how you kind of get in a rhythm, how you build the habits, the cadence for thinking ahead and adapting.
Are there places that come to mind most immediately, places meaning institutions that have succeeded at becoming a connected college?
One of the things I find, I think examples and case studies are kind of the currency of higher ed. And people, sometimes examples are misused, right? And you get kind of copycat syndrome and people don't adapt. But I think by and large, it's really helpful because it gives people a concrete example, and it also gives them some information and some inspiration. And so in the book, I think I reference 154 different institutions, and they range from community colleges to small privates to large publics. As it turns out, University of Michigan is the one mentioned most frequently, I think 7 times, something like that. But there's a lot of different answers to that question. And it might be, if you think about these 5 connections, it might be different people doing different things. Like on the belonging front, 2 of the institutions I talked about in the book, Michigan State and Emory, both made major commitments to really improve the spaces for affinity and identity groups, which is such a key part of belonging. And but like through Apple, we do a national student experience survey, and the spaces that students are least satisfied with are actually affinity and identity group spaces because they're often, stuffed in basements and, pushed to the campus edge. So people that are really moving the needle on that is pretty encouraging. I think, when you think about support, places that have like a one-stop shop. So instead of students getting the runaround, places like University of Minnesota, UT San Antonio, I think, do a really good job at that. Like when it comes to that course career connection, I think there's lots of institutions that are doing great stuff with life design, right? Where it's like thinking about who you want to be and then how your career contributes to that, and then how your coursework leads to that career and that life, like ASU and Tulane and Johns Hopkins, Stanford. I think, when it comes to that internal communication, I love these examples of people creating communities of practice, like Purdue's Communicators Council, or National University has an analytics community of practice that's bringing together all the folks that are doing that across different units. I love Carnegie Mellon when it comes to, or Champlain College when it comes to partnerships. I think, every college is working with different companies, but like who has a front door, who's doing it at scale, who's doing it consistently, who's moving from, this is something we do to something we are. So I think there's so many great examples out there. I tried to include as many as possible, both in my rambling answer and in my 350-page book.
No, not rambling, but while you were talking, it did occur to me that, one of the many benefits of becoming a more connected college is that it kind of lubricates the machinery of the institution, and it can absorb new things a bit more quickly, right? So partnerships can more easily navigate themselves through an institution structure, or infrastructure, I should say, when everything is connected in a way that other more, divided up, cut up operations might allow for. And I think that that's one of the things I think that also speaks to like being a more modern type of organization is, if we're going to position ourselves for greatness, we have to be ready to accept it. And that comes with this kind of lubrication that, being a connected college can provide.
Yeah. And I have no problem contradicting myself. And I think one of the ways that I've seen institutions effectively get ready like that is sort of the opposite of a connected college, which is create some kind of skunk works, right? Like sometimes you need to break something off and give it some space and some safety, and then you find the way to integrate it. So I think that can also be part of the strategy too. I think sometimes you have to figure out what you've got in order to make more of it. And so that's okay. That's okay too. I think I'm a realist about readiness.
So yeah, I think, as the saying goes, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And I think that that's where we are with higher education. It's like we have to, get everybody ready. And so we can get what we are here to get. And I think that that is part of what a connected college can do.
Student deportations, suspended research grants, penalizations for DEI initiatives. And that's just this week. These and a whole raft of other legal questions and challenges are redefining higher education every day. That's where our new podcast, Campus Docket, comes in. I'm Scott Schneider, an attorney and adjunct professor at the University of Texas School of Law. And in every episode of Campus Docket, I'll be joined by Eric Kelderman, senior writer at the Chronicle of Higher Education, to break down the latest legal issues that higher ed leaders need to know about, from slash funding to rules regarding NIL and student athletics and everything in between. Tune in to Campus Docket, part of the Volt podcast network, as we help you navigate higher ed's thorny legal issues.
I'm curious if you could speak to the non-campus version of this, right? So not everyone, of course, learns, through a traditional experience. And so how does the notion of a connected college extend to adult learners or even other important audiences on campus? I'm not sure if it can. It feels like it could extend to like advancement communities, et cetera. But what does that look like?
I'm glad you brought that up. And I think the connected college is very intentional. 5 or 6 years ago, I wrote a white paper called The Connected Campus. And I called this the connected college very intentionally because I think campus does not equal institution. I think there's so many things that go beyond the walls. I think it could be online learners. It could be relationships out in the community with companies, alumni around the world, and in your backyard. And I think it's really important we take that broader, more inclusive look. And the interesting thing that I've learned in doing lots of projects that are really about supporting adult learners is they may have some unique needs, but what I've found is generally if you design for an online adult learner everybody's happier. Like we did a project for Portland State, which was how do we improve the experience of online adult learners? And doing the ethnography, running the numbers, some of the key pain points were things like better coordination of support, interactive degree planning to inform advising, coordinating and consolidating the tech stack with a new student portal that put everything in one place. And then we went and talked to traditional students, and they were like, check, check, check. That would be great. But let's do all those things because that'll help me too. So, I mean, there's certainly need for more flexibility and, shorter bite-sized things and shorter semesters and so forth that may not be broadly applicable. But I think if you design for an adult learner, you make all learners happy. And I think it comes down to, it's redesigning processes and support services. It's like really rethinking career services to be integrated in the academic experience. Like, I think one of the fatal flaws for too long career services has been this extra thing that students should do in spare time that they don't have. And nobody feels that more acutely than maybe like student parents or adult learners with other responsibilities. But if you fix that, if you create 4-credit courses for career development, you help everybody. And as it turns out, only 24% of undergrads take a course for credit to explore career paths. So if we get the other 76%, it's going to help. It's going to help everybody. I think it's prior learning assessment. It's state initiatives that are about re-engaging some college, no degree. So yeah, I think a better connected college and university works better for all students.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, I think I can come up with some of the answers to the question I'm about to ask you, of course. But in your work, what have been some of the main obstacles that have kind of been in the way of institutions becoming a more connected college?
Well, I think the lack of strategy that we were talking about is a huge one. I'll just put a half a foot on the soapbox. I think in addition to all the things we're talking about, the other thing I can't stand is that when you don't have focus, you spread your people thin. And we are like so stuck in the do more with less mindset and ethos. And so I am the champion of focus so you can do less with more, right? Like focus your resources. So I think strategy is a big part of it. I love like Rowan University has a 1-page strategic plan. One of their goals is to be a regional economic engine. They've doubled their economic impact in 5 years. Like Florida State, one of their goals is about leading in entrepreneurship. And then you go to the IR dashboard and you can see how many students are enrolled and involved in entrepreneurial activities, courses, clubs, and so forth. It's like, they're focused, they've got it. The big picture connects to the details. I think if you can get past the strategy barrier, the next one you encounter is structure, right? Where you do have the writing lab and the writing center and everybody's got their own Marcom, analytics, technology, facilities, HR function. And in the future, I think we're going to see a lot more matrixed organizations, a lot more communities of practice. But right now, that's a barrier. And I think culture is the other big one, right? Where it's turf wars, it's deferring decisions like, oh, let's study this a little bit more. Let's wait for perfect data that's going to make my hard decision easy, which almost never happens. Everything can't be a slam dunk. You got to take some jump shots. And so I think that's another one. I think they're often process heavy. I love one of the things I reference in the book. Jason Fried, 37 Signals, has this idea that policy is organizational scar tissue. Something goes wrong. It's probably an isolated incident. So you make a policy, right, that's an encumbrance to everybody who may not make that same mistake. So minimizing processes, I think, can also help. And I think the biggest culture change or the biggest barrier is that generally higher ed adapts by adding, right? There's a new function, there's a new need, and we stand up a new center, a new program, a new degree, a new office, and each of those takes space, technology, people, And that's how you end up with a writing lab and a writing center or a center for faculty development that sits next to, and I've seen this, a center for faculty engagement. And I would argue that like those are pretty similar functions. So I think if we can do the hard work, if we can make the bold decisions, if we can work together, we don't have to adapt by adding. We don't have to have the turf wars, and we can have the strategy that focuses us.
So strategy, structure, and culture are some of the biggest obstacles standing in the way of higher education institutions becoming a more connected college. And I think that, I love that answer because I think that it is comprehensive and it requires a bit more thinking than what we typically are forced to consider in these conversations around becoming better institutions for the audiences that we serve, right? It's usually a much different, more tactical kind of conversation about what we need to do on a campus to attract and retain and make a student experience as good as it can be. And so I appreciate those very well thought out kind of sections of thinking, especially the culture one. Because I think oftentimes, we've had this conversation on Higher Voltage before, is that, people are bringing their own cultures into a place. However you're defining culture, how they learn, where they're from, everything is included in that. And it feels like sometimes the expectation is an institution is asking you to like drop all that to become part of this culture. And we have to figure out what makes that experience a bit more two-way street, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I see that all the time. And that's often the barrier to collaboration because there are these subcultures. Like a lot of my work is reimagining libraries as student success hubs. And the most challenging part of that isn't getting everyone aligned on helping students because everybody wants to. It's that the writing center, the tutoring center, the media lab, the makerspace, the math lab, the library, IT, the Office of Undergrad Research, the Center for Experiential Learning, they all have like different ways of doing things. They all have subcultures. IT may use the word customer, and then talking about students. And then they may say that in a workshop, and then their colleagues and future collaborators are like bristling at that. And that's where you have to make that common ground, or there's tension, right? Like libraries have space, but no money, and IT has money, but no space. So it's like, you have to build some bridges. You have to create some shared understanding. You have to give a little grace, but you can come together and make great things happen.
Couldn't agree with you more. I would imagine that there are some people listening to this conversation who are very intrigued by the idea of becoming a connected college, but have no idea where to start. I'm curious what you would consult or how you would advise people who are interested in starting down this path. What are the first couple things to consider?
It's a great question. I want to be sure I don't come across as the doom and gloom guy because I think there are amazing things happening at every college and university. It's a matter of dialing certain things up and down to be even more successful. And I think what those things are will vary by institution. Like sometimes it's about sharing data, and there just isn't a good picture of like who the student is and what their needs are. So a great way to start is creating that shared picture of who the student is and what success looks like. And instead of like the dining hall, the math department, and the library each doing their own student survey, you're finding some way to come together. So I think sometimes it's like you don't have that shared picture because you're not sharing the data. Sometimes a great way to start is just what's all the awesome shit we're doing and how do we share it in such a way that other people can start doing it? Like maybe one school has an amazing first year experience and other schools could adapt it, or maybe there's like a Marcom community of practice that cuts across functions and it could work really well for technology or for analytics. So I think another great way to start is some kind of student success summit, right? Where you're spotlighting the people who are crushing it and you're getting other people inspired and informed about how they can too. The last thing that comes to mind is just kind of an audit or an examination of what you've got to look for those redundancies or look for those opportunities. Like, I can't tell you how many workshops I've facilitated where it's like we're doing like a technology service model, or we're thinking about academic programs. You put each one on a Post-it or on a Miro board. Literally every single time, the dean, the CIO, the provost will step back and say, this is too much. We're doing too many things. It happens every time. So
Yeah.
that's a great way to say this is too many Post-its, or like these two are really similar. Could they join forces? Or gosh, this thing over here is like a totally disconnected island. Like, should we still be doing that? Or actually, should we like be doubling down on that and giving it more support? So sometimes a really like lo-fi audit of your programs, of your tech stack, of your centers can really yield a great way to get started.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of like little corners of institutions that kind of feel like catch-all kind of, I don't want to say junk drawer, but like catch-all kind of drawer, or it's like we have 2 students who are doing it, and I get it. Every dollar matters, but what's the consequence of all of the bones that have to be built around that kind of offer? It's, like you said before, staff time is being thinned out so dramatically. There's not enough time to do something super, super well. And so where can we kind of reduce our effort and refocus it, as you have mentioned, in really thoughtful, strategic ways? The question, and you kind of spoke a bit to this earlier, but I'm always curious what people's view of the future might look like. And so what to you does higher ed look like in 5 or 10 years?
Well, when I shine up my crystal ball, which is one of my favorite emojis to use in a LinkedIn post, at least according to LinkedIn, is constantly suggesting it to me. I feel like a pretty good bet is things are going to get more blended, right? Like, I think on campus and online are going to be, instead of being seen as 2 disparate functions with their own tech stack and their own set of instructional designers, I think increasingly those are going to come together, because that there's going to be like a continuum of learning experiences, right? Some online, some on campus, some for a semester, some for a day, some for a week. Likewise, I think education and work are going to blend. So they're already blending in co-op schools and with internships. But I think experiential learning, I think class projects for companies and community groups will be the norm. If 5 years from now, people are doing projects where they're missing out on the opportunity to build skills and relationships with a company in the community that might need an intern that summer, or a chance for a student to meet their future self, and now all of a sudden their stats class comes alive because they met a market analyst or market researcher, I would be very surprised. So I think education and work will blend. I think on campus and online will blend. And I think the different functions within a university will blend. If 5 years from now, it's still the norm for students to talk to one person about the classes to take and another person about the career path they want to pursue, that's crazy pants. That's one function, right? We gotta have career and academic advising. So I think there's going to be a blending of functions, and I think the other blend is going to be of institutions. And for some, that's going to be, hopefully it's as few outright closures as possible, and it's more consolidations and it's more consortia, right? I was recently at Champlain College, small college in Vermont. They're part of the Green Mountain Higher Ed Consortium, where with Middlebury and St. Michael's, they share a bunch of back office functions. Every small college does not have to have their own purchasing function, right? Let's get some economy of scale. Let's have one ERP, whatever it might be. It's certainly a lot easier to share on the back office than it is on student-facing things. And, those will probably end up blending too. But I think we're in for a more blended, connected future, because these things that have been separate for so long, just the natural order of things is pushing us to bring them together.
I love how thoroughly this thread of being more connected through this conversation has been interesting to me, because it's another version of the consolidation of effort, the sharing services. That's all in an effort to be more efficient, right? And I think that is one of the tenets, it sounds like, of being a more connected college and refocusing efforts. So I think that it all makes good sense, especially the ones that are more outwardly facing, more student facing, I should say, which, people will feel that in the day-to-day kind of experience on a campus. I think that all of that makes really good sense. I'm excited for how this book performs. I hope a lot of people have already read it, but if you would like more information about The Connected College by Elliot Felix, you can find more information about that on our episode page, including a link to purchase and other information as well. Elliot, thank you so much for joining us today on Higher Voltage. It was a blast, and I would love to have you back on to talk about some of the things that you've witnessed or noticed in trends as more connected colleges come online.
Thanks, Kevin. I really enjoyed it. I got a real charge out of the conversation.
Yeah.
And,
Right on.
I look forward to coming back and following up and seeing how these trends are progressing and revisiting some of these predictions and prescriptions. And, I'm in it for the impact. So if people can use this playbook at their institution to help students succeed, that's a pretty good day at work. So thanks for the opportunity.
Of course. And it's important also to note that when you purchase the book, there are lots of tools and infrastructure available for book clubs, summary pages, some additional thinking that might help out any institution that takes on an initiative like this one to become a more connected college.
Thank you.
That's it for this week's episode of Higher Voltage. We'll be back soon with a new episode. And until then, you can find us on Twitter @VoltHigherEd. And you can find me, Kevin Tyler, on Twitter @KevinCTyler2.